What are you guys, from the trust recession standpoint, where are you seeing the opportunity here with agencies to avoid over-optimizing AI usage?
I think it's going to be very interesting to go later down in the years of what AI could possibly look like and impact in the world. But people are going to connect ultimately with authenticity and with humans at the end of the day to be able to cut through the noise.
They taste and look and feel really good, but at the end of the day, they're vacuous, right? So the challenge is they take all of the real substance out of your brand.
AI does, you guys have probably heard this metaphor of, AI is essentially predictive text. So if you have the situation where you're using it to generate content, you're going to get an average outcome at the end of the day.
Welcome back to SEO On-Air. I'm Koa Kauwe, the SVP of Partnerships at Stand Ventures. At Stand Ventures, we partner with agencies and brands across the country to help them build authority through transparent link building. Today's episode is about really working with three very different agencies and finding more about what's working for them in areas that are kind of unique. We're talking CRO and different lead gen opportunities that are not standard in the SEO conversation. So we're really going to diversify the conversation today. And we also have perspective from working with SMBs to working with larger national companies. So we're really excited to have the three of you on with us. We appreciate you giving us your time. Today, the first question I have is going to be, it's a deep one, a complicated one to answer right off the bat. So agency churn in many SMB markets still sits somewhere between 30 to 50% annually. And zero-click searches now account for more than half of search behavior in some studies. Obviously, that depends on what study you're finding. And cost per click in competitive industries like legal and healthcare are also going up to 20 to 30%. So when we're talking about customers today, there's a really tough conversation of like pulling out the right information. And one of the things that I thought about as I prepared for this podcast was like deep study. And I've been working on a website myself, and I found myself just getting passionately lost in the customer situation and spent 30, 40 hours on this one specific customer. And that specific customer is my wife's business. So it was very easy for me to feel passionate about it. But as I thought about this, I thought about how complicated it is for agencies to really dive deep into what their customer does when the customer doesn't always give them the budget that they need to work with. And I've also found that many companies that we have on the podcast have these discovery calls that are pretty scripted. And they've probably polished them to the point where they feel like they can pull most information out of the customer. But I want to ask you guys, how are you able to understand, not necessarily going super deep into the customer, but how do you dive deep into a customer with a limited budget? And how are you really pulling what a customer does out of them appropriately to make sure that you're launching successful marketing campaigns in the first place? How do you understand the psychology of that customer and what they really do?
I can jump in and start there, Koa. So I think there's an important distinction to be made in terms of what the agency does at a fundamental level. And I got a lot of friends that run agencies. I got friends who work in agencies, and I kind of put everything sort of on a spectrum of what I would call a productized service all the way towards what I would call a true agency. And a true agency is a place where somebody's doing something 100% custom. The work that's being done for that client will never be replicated. I think the archetype of this in my mind is like the Sterling Cooper Draper Price from Mad Men. You got, some genius who's going to come up with something that's going to blow the market wide open. And then all the way on that other side, you got stuff that's a little bit more productized. I would put CaseFuel, my company, in that camp. We work with a very specific kind of niche, and it's lawyers and even more specific than that. Like we did probably spend the better part of the last 5 years working exclusively with estate planning lawyers. So as a customer, it's important to understand what kind of agency you're working with. And as an agency, it's important to understand where you're coming in. Because I think one of the worst situations that people come into is when you are agreeing to something at a productized rate and potentially promising an extremely custom outcome, right? So I think the discovery calls for, and I can probably speak more to the more productized way of that. So for us, we know more or less exactly what the techniques and services that we do can do. So for us, it's really important to understand whether the client's actually going to be able to succeed with that. And over the years, just, based on, at this point for us, 500 plus client deployments, I can tell you probably within the first 5 minutes whether somebody's well suited for this from a business perspective, from a temperament perspective, from an accessory skills perspective, so on and so forth. And, just from a marketing agency perspective, I think one thing that every single person has to make sure that they're getting from a prospect when they're having that conversation is, what is that person actually going to do after I've finished my job? For us, it's like appointments, and, there's ways to figure out whether they have the infrastructure to handle that. But that's kind of how I like to think about that stuff too.
Yeah, I'll also add to that conversation. So my agency works exclusively with small businesses. So our definition is quote unquote a small budget. And how are we able to do that? So I agree with what you said about it being an agency choice of who do you want to be in the world? Do you want to be the boutique, or do you want to be the one that has set services, niche down on a particular audience that you want to ultimately serve? And how do those things meet in the middle to be able to accomplish those goals? So we start, in order to work with those clients, to be able to get their buy-in or be able to understand, and then us to be able to take that goals and then turn it into a strategy. Starts with that conversation of, you client, what are you looking to accomplish? What are your goals? What do you want to get? What is that endpoint? What does success look like to you? And then being able to learn more deeply about who they are, what they want, and get realistic on how many leads that they want, how many dollars in revenue that they ultimately want to earn. And then, can our marketing strategies, the services that we provide, can we help accomplish those goals? Is that a right suitable fit? So like you were talking about with the discovery call, a lot of that happens there, and we're not going to take on clients with very broad or obtuse kind of business models or kind of undefined goals, but more, we've been able to narrow down, this is the type of customer that we serve. And based on that, they can fit within our services. And we're able to create a quote unquote winnable case where we're able to deliver the services effectively based on that client profile that we ultimately end up serving, and just meet in the middle when it comes down to expectations, to budget and strategy. But it's taken a long time to be able to do that. My agency we're 10 years in. So it's taken us a long time to narrow down our service offerings, our target audience, and make sure that we have that proof of concept to be able to go out and do the things that we say we're going to do.
So I like the way that Madeleine put it, really focusing on the small business and really knowing your audience is really important. The way we do it is we provide a simple tool. It's called a competitive analysis. And we provide that as a free service for any business. We've been talking to a lot of startups and small businesses because that's really kind of our target audience. And we provide this as a free service, whether they work with us or not. Our goal is to really help businesses that are struggling. We feel like small businesses and startups are really getting killed in the marketplace right now. And so we offer this tool as a way to help small businesses and startups to really get a leg up on their, we call them their Goliaths in the marketplace. And so this competitive analysis gives them a go-to-market strategy, or at least the start of a go-to-market strategy, so they can really identify the way that they can start competing. And this is just something, whether they work with us or not, this is the free tool that we provide for them. And then that kind of sets them up to learn a little bit more about how we work with them and the way that we kind of go to market. And this is a free tool that just kind of gives them kind of some quick wins. We call them their David slingshot tools. That it gives them 6 quick wins that they can put in their slingshot to really shoot the gaps in the marketplace. There's several things that it has in there, but that's some of the things that it does. And this is a tool that we provide for them at no cost. So that's kind of the first step. And then we then build a deep brand analysis from there that gives them about, it's a 45-page analysis. That's kind of the next thing. And then from there, we can build out a really fast go-to-market strategy that it takes us about 2 weeks to onboard them from there.
I think that's really interesting because I think that I make the mistake sometimes of thinking the customer is always going to know what they want, right? I've had agencies on that mention that the customer needs to be leading the strategy because they know what they're doing. They need to be a part of that. But the way you just positioned it is we're going to figure out where you exist in this market and then tell you where your opportunities are. And I think that actually is, finding those opportunities. I had another agency that talked about a point system that they used. And I've referred to this on the podcast a lot because I think it just made a lot of sense to me. With very limited number of points, we have to figure out where we're going to allocate the points with your budget, which would be the points, and what marketing strategies we're going to put those points into. Because some of them will give you an ROI, some of them won't. It depends on the industry, and a classic marketing question of it always depends on the customer, right? So that I think I'm going to transition to my next question pretty quickly here, because it does come down to where with zero click becoming more of a conversation in today's marketing world, organic has maybe lost some of the traffic it's had in the past. And I know cost per click for any paid ads is going up. I think maybe with board teams seeing less leads coming through organic, they're saying we need more leads for the company. Where do we allocate that budget? So paid ads are going there, and even the evolution of ads showing up in LLMs potentially. And Jan, I know you have a unique strategy around generating leads for companies that you're using with. So I'm going to open this conversation up to the three of you and say, where are you allocating points today? Where are you seeing the most success for your customers? It doesn't necessarily need to be for every customer, but tell me what's working today for you guys.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. It's been really interesting because over the time that I've been active in Google pay-per-click, the landscape has changed so much. It's so crazy. You would spit if you knew the cost per click we were getting in 2015 for personal injury attorneys. I swear to God. And if you kind of look at this from a supply and demand perspective, you've got basically, that kind of explains why clicks are going to be steadily going up and to the right. And, I remember back in the day, we could get somebody some traction for $1,000 budget, $2,000 budget on Google ads. These days, if you're talking personal injury, very few agencies are going to take a client on for less than, $10,000 or $20,000 sometimes even. So where I kind of see that going, and this all kind of works into the zero click stuff, because for the first time ever, Google has essentially been capped on its total search volume in the US since about 2016. So every single client that gets a $500 voucher when they set up their analytics is going to be another person on the demand side. And that's why Google's stock price has been going up and to the right ever since. And then they could honestly care less if they've got 10 people who can pay $25 a click or one guy who can pay $250 a click. As a matter of fact, it's probably better if you can have that one guy. So at the end of the day, it's kind of a shame, but Google really does not care about the small business. And to kind of get around that, and this is the thing, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Koa, and also I think this is a really important thing that both you guys said, Madeleine and Ben. It's you have to kind of understand the discovery space. Look, there are some people out there that have tons of money to spend on a pay-per-click campaign, and that's the right tool for that person. Or there's a white space in how they could optimize that strategy. But one of the things that we've been doing a lot with clients, and this has been really interesting, because I mentioned we'd started out a lot of stuff in the estate planning space, but it's been branching out to a lot of these other areas of law, going from more of a lead generation perspective to more of a demand generation perspective. And the way that we do that is with education. Mostly webinars is kind of the way that we're doing it, but it's kind of interesting. There was this really great, I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Super. It's like one of those classics, kind of a marketing book more than a sales book, to be honest. But a lot of it kind of echoes some of the work that Eugene Schwartz did back in the day in terms of market awareness. And based on the research that he did, for any person that is actively in a buying now, about 3% of any given market is in that space. 7 to 10% are open, 20 to 30% are not actively looking for it, and 20 to 30% don't think that they need it. And again, you can imagine this for a lot of different potential services that people are having. The one that I love to use is family law stuff. There's a group of people that are typing in family law attorney near me today. But for every person that's doing that, if that's the 3%, there's probably somewhere 22 that are in various stages of, he's on his last leg, she didn't come home that night, or, I don't think I can make it in this relationship anymore. And then when you're introducing those people, and it's a little bit of a different challenge from a copy perspective, but well-written ads on stuff like YouTube Meta, getting those people into informational, not necessarily lead generation opportunity. A lot of people are open to that. And we're seeing cost per leads for a fraction of the cost of what a lot of these clicks are costing in pay-per-click, which is fantastic. So that's been really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. Madeline, I know that the psychology of marketing is something that you really take into account here. I think the strategy there is kind of interesting because it is approaching the LLM strategy of really trying to capture top of funnel before they get down into like actually knowing what they're searching for. How are you applying similar logic to your marketing campaigns, Madeline?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting to think about that because the world of search has changed, as we all know, in terms of how people start that kind of buying decision, and starts first and foremost from like them just understanding that they have a problem. And so where are they going when they know they have an issue? When something starts to keep them up at night, when something is bothering them, they know that they have an issue that needs solved. So where do they go to be able to go deeper down that process? So I feel like LLMs are the beautiful world where people can now explore without judgment or without necessarily being poached by sales conversations, to be able to just go and investigate that process. My definition of SEO has always been very broad. My mission, first and foremost, is to maximize visibility, period. So it has never been, let's optimize a website to show up on Google. And now it's not, let's optimize our Yelp profile to show up higher on Yelp. Like it's all of those combined. We want to be able to maximize visibility and get in front of the people who need it. I still, in order to create the best success and results for my clients, will go from that very bottom of the funnel. Let's make sure that we're there when people are having that transactional search intent, to make sure that they are ready to buy, and we get that visibility when they are there. So I always start there whenever it comes down. And that helps me work with small businesses, because that's how I'm able to put dollars in their pocket the fastest when it comes down to that, is make sure that they show up for their core offerings in those particular places. And then in the spirit of like, how can we maximize visibility and kind of work ourselves up the funnel to be able to get that kind of broader presence, is being able to leverage SEO tactics like content creation, of making sure that we have a whole content suite that is built around people's decision-making processes at whatever stage that they're in. So if we are selling something like massage therapy, we want to make sure that we have those kind of blog pillars that talk about, do you have chronic back pain, and talk about those symptoms in a way that people are colloquially speaking and typing into LLMs of, I can't get a good night's sleep because my back always hurts, or my office chair is really uncomfortable. Like thinking about those things, those problem area items, SEO optimized content is going to help show up for them at that funnel. But at the same time, we've prioritized our SEO strategy to make sure that we are there whenever people are searching for massage therapists near me. So we've kind of encapsulated all of that, and having that good content is needed in order to show up for massage therapy. So it's like this whole beautiful little cycle that gets to self-propel itself, to make sure that we have that holistic standpoint and are there where people are searching.
Ben, I want to give you a chance here, because I know from that conversation around the LLMs and how to produce the right content, and the paid ads conversation, you've seen kind of an interesting correlation between organic and paid ads. Tell me what you're seeing from your perspective here.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. So like we had like with our client that has they're going against Wall Street, that has like massive paid budgets. And, our client can't compete with these massive paid budgets. So we leaned in on GEO and answer strategies. And we even leaned in further on local strategies for this. It's a national client, but we leaned on local geographies so that we can penetrate these local geographies to win on that local LLM strategy, right? So being able to penetrate these local geographies and win on a local geography, and just target key local geographies, right? Because for this client, we don't have to win across the board, but we have to just win enough of these local geographies to drive ROI, right? And I think like Madeleine, you said a lot of really critical things: getting maximum visibility, showing up on those core offerings. But for this client, being able to show up in just a couple of core geographies in that way is huge for them, right? So if they can show up in Phoenix, they can show up in Dallas, and they can penetrate and start, when somebody's searching for those things on their phone and saying, hey, I need to find a provider that solves this for my phone, because they do telephony, right? I need to find somebody who can solve this particular, and getting those long tail keywords, and really getting it so that they're the ones that shows up in those local geographies. Their competitors have 500,000 keywords, right? How do you compete against somebody who's been building SEO for 20 years and has 500,000 keywords? You've got to hit locally, right? This is how the Revolutionary War was won for here in America, right? They didn't go and try to attack all the cities. They won in one city at a time, right? And that's, what you said, Madeleine, I think was key.
If I can hop in, guys, I'm really curious about this because I'm like so far outside of the SEO world. When you guys capture the attention of somebody higher up in the funnel, what's the mechanism that you guys are using to turn that into an opportunity? Especially, I know it's can be tough with some of the zero-click stuff, but how do you guys bring that all the way to a win for the client?
So for me, we do use paid, right? So, but we use paid really strategically. We use retargeting, right? So when we identify when the right person comes to the website, then we do use Google retargeting. We use meta retargeting. We then also do we retarget for an email sequence, and then we even send them a postcard. So we're very strategic. When the right person comes to the website, we retarget the crap out of that person. We're even looking at adding CTV for that person as well. That's something we're just starting to implement. But we are very we treat that person when they come to the website, we're treating them as gold bars, right? So we're going to target that person like crazy. So yeah, we are very selective. Also, when we have ads that are landing, posts that are landing on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, we are boosting those posts. That is the only way that we currently are using paid right now, because we find that paid is like the last part of our strategy. That's the way we're using paid right now. We've done a study that paid Google ads have just become so expensive, and especially, Jen, for your market is one of the most expensive in the study that we've done, and it's gotten ridiculous for legal, it's gotten ridiculous for publishing. So we only use paid very strategically.
So I'll jump in as well and talk about this. For very certain industries and very certain clients, I like to do like the email marketing thing of being able to capture them, be able to provide something of value. So we do this a lot for like our own business. And then I also have certain industries where this is helpful. So I've got elopement photographers, which is the weirdest niche you could think of. But the way to win elopement photographers is by nurturing them on email. You have to build that relationship because people plan their weddings for a decade they dream about eloping for years and years and years. And so you have to get in their inbox and stay that top of mind. So we often coach our clients to okay, well, you need to build some sort of guide for being able to elope in this location, or what are your couples looking for? So be able to capture them on that website and be able to funnel them through your email marketing system and be able to nurture those leads. That's a super helpful way to be able to continue to do that. So that's only appropriate in certain industries. Like we do auto, and not many people are going to download the ultimate guide to change your oil. So it may not be appropriate for every particular industry, but that's always a conversation we have of do we have a longer sales process? And therefore, what do we need to put in place to make sure that we do capture those top of funnel? But since I do work with such small businesses with very controlled budgets, I usually only target the bottom of the funnel type of people. We make sure we go for the transactional search intent. If we're doing pay-per-click, we are going for the things that are going to make them money and be able to convert from that. And that's where we pair on our conversion rate optimization hat to be able to say, how can we increase our chances of success in the moment that we have with them? So we're really intentional about our landing pages and our button placement and our copy and our messaging to make sure that we drive people down to make that ideal action. So we tap into a lot of consumer-based psychology of making sure that we get people's we capture their attention, we resonate with their problem, and we are able to go and ultimately put them in the bucket of success. So one of the strategies that we use in our agency is story brand, based on the book Building a Story Brand. So I love that messaging philosophy. It really taps into the human side of marketing, of being able to really identify with your customer and be able to be that guide to bring them towards success. So I love that kind of marketing philosophy. I think it helps a lot with CRO and making the most out of that moment that we have with our particular customer when they're at that transactional stage.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of interesting too, just kind of as far as, I mean, if we're going to take the assumption that the longer tail stuff or potentially top of funnel is like a good way to play Moneyball, one of the things I don't think enough agencies talk about is like, you got to be able to take somebody from the top all the way to the bottom if that's the game you're playing. I used to say this to clients back in the day. It's like, I used to consider stuff like Google ads, which I guess is probably closer to those, like head keywords or something like that. That's like, in a football analogy, that'd be like running a fullback dive. You got one shot, you're going to make it, you're going to not. It took you everything to get there. Versus doing something that's more top of funnel is more like a punt return. What I think is really fascinating about what you guys are saying is that there's a lot of different ways to return a punt. You can rush the ball, you can pass it, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But as long as you have the situation where that chain of custody is going down all the way, then I think it's feasible. But I also think it's really interesting, Madeleine, that you recommend that I think in my experience too, especially with smaller businesses, I think it takes more in terms of the like marketing stuff as well as the sales ability to potentially move a prospect from that place. So a lot of the times it is safer to kind of move those people towards a bottom of funnel type strategy.
Yeah, I love what Madeleine's talking about. Getting their initial content. One of the things we almost always do, and every brand is different, right? So that's why we do that competitive analysis right off the bat, because we have to know where they're at. And that's what that competitive analysis helps us do. But one of the things we almost always do with our clients is we almost always build out like a 2-month just building out their content, their brand. As Madeleine says, their stories, generally that's video content, that's case studies, that's all of the things they need to really have assets, because you can't market somebody without assets, right? And so before we do marketing plays, we typically will do their assets, and we start there. But what we'll typically do while we're doing that, we'll start and we do a lot of B2B and more than B2C, right? So we will typically start a LinkedIn sales motion where we will actually start reaching out for the principal person, and we will start getting them connections on LinkedIn in like a direct motion where we can actually start setting appointments for them on a direct motion. And this has been pretty effective. So we try to get them kind of top of the funnel meetings where we can start doing because a lot of times what people are, they want to start doing Google ads specifically because they think that's going to get me sales, right? They think if I can just start doing Google ads, I can start getting sales, but helping them to see there's other ways to do it that are much less expensive and much more cost effective. That kind of gets them to see impact without having to, just start burning money on Google ads. And so that is what we found has been more effective, especially for small businesses and startups. You can start having those connections and conversations and start scheduling meetings while you're developing their brand, while you're starting to stand up a marketing and a content motion. So that's what we found has been really effective.
The something you were saying, Madeleine, about having like your buttons in the right spot, even just to like make sure that like when people are engaging with you, they're seeing like something that's unique and different and speaks to them. Ben, along the lines of what you're saying as well, it's like making sure that like there's a brand to it and it's not just a generic experience, right? Like you're saying, go make connections beyond the paid ads. I'm going to refer back to my wife's situation with like opening her business. I went the full route of trying to make everything with AI. And I think this is really like a cool learning opportunity for anyone that's listening, because was probably a pretty good website from the SEO standpoint. And I got like paid ads optimized by using like a little bit of AI recommendations. And the deeper I went into those, in the amount of time I spent trying to understand it, I just was uncovering amazing holes in the design, in the usability of it, in the paid ad spend and where it was going to go. And I was like, I don't have 200 hours to dedicate towards trying to optimize this. And I'm thinking about agencies that have really that are trying not to just lean on AI to make sure that they understand the real customer experience and can deliver that experience for their clients, customers, and seeing the real value in an agency when so many people are saying they don't see the value of the agency today. That conversation is every one of your customers is using AI to try to build their own plan and then says, hey, implement this for me. And the agencies are having to look at these plans and say, this doesn't make any sense at all for your situation. Here's what you were missing. And then, Ben, you can take your full assessment of their market situation that you put together with strategic thought and show them why there's holes in their plan. So it's a long-winded way to the conversation of 70% of marketers are using generative AI in their workflow, whether that's content creation, assessments, and other things like that. I'm curious, with so many, where is the line between smart leverage of AI and over-reliance on AI, where you start seeing the same holes that I'm expressing when like the website has functionally everything it's supposed to have, but the bounce rate could be about 100% because it just doesn't connect with the user. How are you guys jumping that gap? How are you bridging that gap?
I'll jump in. So there was a study done maybe 2 years ago, but it predicted something called a trust recession is coming. So people are going to gradually start losing trust in the things that they see online because of AI, because they're not going to know what's real and what's true and what's authentic. So I think it's going to be very interesting to go later down in the years of what AI could possibly look like and impact in the world. But people are going to connect ultimately with authenticity and with humans at the end of the day to be able to cut through the noise. Whenever it comes down to like how we use AI in our agencies, to be able to use it to support our systems, I think AI usage is something that all agencies need to adopt. We have to understand the tools, and consumers often look to us as these leaders in the AI space. There was also a study done that proved this, that customers have an expectation that agencies are supposed to teach us SEO or teach us AI, how to use it, what the tools are, what its limitations are. They have a lot of fears about it, and they're trusting us to be able to guide them through that. So we as agencies have to incorporate it to be able to be better at what we do, to free up time so that it allows us to do more strategic and creative thinking, and to be able to use it to optimize our processes and flows. So AI is a given. Where that line comes in is through that lens of authenticity, of is this helpful content? Is this true? Is this a real brand that I can connect with? And I go, because I'm in the SEO world, go a lot by Google's guidelines. So AI generated content that's pure AI and just mass produced doesn't get indexed. Period. It won't stick if it's just mass produced and has no human element. So you could be spending all of your time uploading 100 blogs a day, but it's not going to get visibility. Maybe on your site, but it's not getting indexed by Google and search engines, and therefore is not helping you. So Google already has a good understanding of like what is true helpful content and what do humans want to seek. I think there's that nice checks and balances between that unfortunately a lot of like AI driven people are diving so deep in the rabbit hole that they have forgotten about that human element. But really understanding people want to connect with humans. And so if we're building websites, if we're building copy, if we're building brands, being able to have that authentic, I am real, I'm human, whether that's a video on your screen or images that you've been able to capture yourself, or being able to truly understand your customer and their problems and their core needs and desires and speaking to them, that's going to win at the end of the day. You can absolutely use that information to partner with AI to produce better content, but you have to have that core understanding of who are you, who is my customer, and how are we going to use AI to help get that visibility that we need.
No, I saw everyone shake their heads when she said trust recession. So what are you guys seeing from I want to expand that a little bit. I actually hadn't heard that term before, and we've had a lot of people on the podcast. We've talked about authenticity. But what, Ben and Jan, what are you guys, from the trust recession standpoint, where are you seeing the opportunity here with agencies to avoid over optimizing AI usage?
Yeah, I mean, we work really hard. We work really hard to keep the human in the loop, and that's a really important term. I think that agencies need to make sure that they're doing is making sure that they don't allow AI to go too far. And I think Madeleine is made a really good point about that, is making sure that it's really easy. And a lot of small, and this is a concern for small businesses. A lot of small businesses are pressing the easy button, right? And they're finding these tools that say, oh, we can do everything. And there's a lot of those tools, and I test those tools just to see what those tools can do, because I'm curious, right? And these tools, like what we do is we test the tools and we evaluate the tools, and they have this, they taste and look and feel really good. But at the end of the day, they're vacuous, right? So the challenge is they take all of the real substance out of your brand. And when if you push that content out, then exactly what Madeleine said, your brand gets de-indexed, right? And so you just suddenly disappear, right? That's like if you owned a restaurant and you build your restaurant right next to, in this really great location, and then all of a sudden all of your roads get put under construction and now nobody can get to your restaurant. That's what you just did by using these easy button tools. It's very dangerous. And so you need to understand, when you press the easy button and you create 100 articles or, this fast content that looks really good, it tastes really good. But when it really boils down to it, it isn't you. It isn't your brand. It isn't your personality. It only sounds like you. And that's the challenge, right? And so you have to understand the risk of what you're doing. And, you have to keep the human in the loop. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to hit the easy button and then I'm going to cut the human out of this equation. AI doesn't know you. It doesn't understand you. And, and this is not necessarily a pitch for working with a good agency. This is a pitch to stay involved in your business, right? And whether you work with a good agency or not, do not work with these tools, because it will kill your business. And it's just such a risk, right? And that's the thing, because these tools and they look really good. They really do. I mean, you look at it and it's like, wow, that looks like great content, but it's dangerous. It's really dangerous for your business, and you've got to be cautious.
Someone told me that the website has to pass the vibe check. I can't remember if that was Madeleine or someone else that I talked to, but like it's an intangible. Like, the website can have all the perfect content for the industry you're in, but there's something about it that it's just not passing from the customer's perspective.
Yeah, you lose your soul, right? It's honestly, there's no soul in that content, and it's like it's the shell of. It's almost like you have little zombie articles that they look and feel like your content, and they look and feel like your website, but they're missing that like critical, like, heart and soul, right? I guarantee you, if you worked with Madeleine, her content would sing and it would dance and it would be alive, right? Whereas if you have one of these bots build your site, it's gonna seem like something Madeleine created, but it's not gonna have that essence and that soul, right? And that's the difference of working with somebody like Madeleine.
I'm even thinking, Jan, you do a lot of webinars, and those webinars they've got to have more trust than like a typical. Like, tell us a little bit more about how you see trust building in the way you're running your agency.
Well, it's interesting. And I'll say this is one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Johnson. That which is written without difficulty is read without pleasure. So it's, and I think it's super true for AI. And like, I think, I kind of look at things in a lot of this stuff boils down to competitive dynamics for me. And like, what I always like to think about is, look, if everybody had these tools, I've never been a fan of being like the leading edge tech person to try to exploit some opportunity for 2-3 months and then just get wiped out when everybody else enters the market. It's not how I've chosen to run my business or my career, but people have done that and done quite well for it. Sometimes I'm jealous of those people when it does work out, but it's a choice I made. But it's one of those things, because if you can imagine everybody doing this, like what is the marginal advantage that your content's going to have? And one of the things I try to coach clients on all the time too is that if you're going to be looking like everybody else, and again, legal, like you mentioned, Ben, is a hyper extreme competitive dynamic type thing, because you have what can appear to be completely identical services to a customer, which will drive price shopping. But that's the thing. It's like if 4 people are selling a Toyota, then you're not going to pay for the most Toyota. But 4 people are selling a Toyota and 1 person's selling a Rolls Royce, you might not buy the Rolls Royce, but you've got a dilemma to make, right? And the only way that you get to that differentiation is by being one of one. And I think having content that reflects your personality is a way to do it. And having stuff that's other people aren't talking about is a really big way to do it. But to kind of think about what AI does, you guys have probably heard this metaphor of, AI is essentially predictive text. So if you have the situation where you're using it to generate content, you're going to get an average outcome at the end of the day. So, and I'm not saying, there are places for it too. Like, answering the question more directly, Koa, it's like, when it comes to webinars, like I think that is the kind of thing that I, the founder who does basically nothing else on the client service side of things or the sales side at this point in the business, I take the time to write the webinars myself. And, I'll use things like, I'll use Perplexity to research topics I'm not familiar with. But I'm not going to have Claude or ChatGPT write that webinar. I might use that to, I might encourage my team to use that to help a client write a transactional email to maximize the show rate to a webinar. But the core message has to be something that's coming from understanding the client on a human level. And I'll also say this too, just like there's really no way to ask an AI to come up with a conclusion that hasn't been reached before at the end of the day, right? So, and then that at the, like when we're talking about the webinars and stuff, the most effective things that we've seen are bringing conversations to the fore that people aren't thinking about. And it's so hard. It's so much to ask of an AI in its current iteration. Maybe AGI hits by the end of this year and we're all out of a job. But for the time being, I think it's a fantastic, assistant. I think it's great for research stuff. I love it on workflows. I'll tell you one thing I love. This is, free for anybody who wants to take it. I love AI for analysis. When I'm analyzing sales calls for internally to my team, we actually created a tool for our clients to analyze their sales calls. But again, it's according to rubrics that humans have developed over hundreds of call reviews and a lot of experience in a place too. But, again, if it's getting something that's 70% as good as a sales coach to, take 10 minutes instead of paying some guy, God knows how much, $500 an hour, some retainer or something to watch every single call, then that's good. I love AI for data crunching, but on the generative side, I'm super skeptical about that.
So we only have a few minutes left here. I want to jump into the last question, which is really asking you all to predict the future. So just give me a quick answer here. What do customers need to look for in an agency to know that they're established for the future? What are some of the red flags maybe of looking for an agency today that I think I want to refer to Jan's perspective of like, hey, they tried to be innovative and they burned out in 3 months. What are the red flags you see from agencies that maybe aren't doing it right that your customers should be aware of?
I got one, flavor of the month stuff. I think the people that are doing the best, it's like, there's either, not to say that there isn't a place for doing new things, but there has to be a through line. Like I love your story, Ben. Everything kind of evolves to a place where you are using AI, but it's in an extremely purposeful way. And that's the kind of thing that as a potential service, buyer, I would look into. Like the thing is that, and it's really funny too, I have this really bad habit of clicking on all my competitors' ads when I'm on like Instagram or Facebook or something. So I see all this stuff too. And it's so funny how many people who were, Mr. pay-per-click are all of a sudden building AI automation experts or, whatever. And it's going to be something different next. They're going to be talking about OpenClaw and blah, blah, blah. And just like, you have to ask yourself if they're risking all of their previous experience to pitch it on some flyer that a lot of other people are thinking of, like how much was the original experience worth? The kind of people that I like to bet on, and this is both in service providers that I hire running a business, but also people like I like to hire myself, are people who go deep. I think, having a compelling story of how somebody's gotten there. But I also think it's really interesting, just, like the same kind of specialization that you do, Madeleine. It's like you have a situation where you work with a certain kind of client and you're working with exclusive that kind of client, as opposed to somebody who's taking, a venture-backed company and a Fortune 500 and, my mom's plumber and all these different things, because you're not like accelerating the deep expertise that's happening. And that's ultimately what I think is one of the hardest things to replace from AI, because it's that implicit pattern matching that you can only get from doing something a bajillion times and seeing how it works in market A and market B and market C, and cross-tabulating that kind of stuff too, because that's essentially your proprietary data set, right? That's your context. It's weird that we're talking about this in terms of like we're an organic AI, but you kind of are at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I want to even maybe rephrase it, Madeleine and Ben, for you guys too. It's not just the red flags, but what are maybe some of the good things you should be looking for in an agency too? Give me a perspective of either one.
Well, I mean, I liked what Jan said. Honestly, I think I would look for a niche agency like Jan, right? Like if you are in a niche market, I think legal is a challenging market, right? I would definitely work with an agency like Jan if you are in a legal industry, because that is a bear right now. And I would work with somebody like Jan. I really love the way that Madeleine's approaching things. I love the way she's approaching storytelling. I do think that an AI only agency is a big red flag to me. I think you've got to keep the human in the loop, and you've got to make sure that, you've got to keep those guardrails in there. I really like Jan's mention about the flavor of the month, right? Somebody who just suddenly becomes an expert about the next Google algorithm. You need somebody who is consistently, doing the right things right. And I think that's really important, because adding that pivot into all the other things is really important. But they've got to be good at telling stories. They've got to be good at content and consistent at that, right? I think Madeleine, I love the way you're approaching this, Madeleine. So that's my take on it.
And Madeleine, go ahead.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So what to look for? I'm going to stick on my little soapbox and talk about brand of being able to identify an agency. Like, are they established? Are they humans? Do they have a mission and story behind what they do? We have a lot of clients that end up choosing us because we have photos of our team on our site. Such a weird little tiny thing. But I've had clients say, like, you guys look like you enjoy your jobs and you're so friendly. And all of the other agencies that I've looked at, they've got these tech oriented websites that are, very minimalistic and very tech savvy and no human touch to it. So they choose us because we have the human touch. So being able to validate, have that kind of brand presence. Are they thought leaders? Are they teaching? Are they speaking? Are they present on different channels? Are they kind of that brand that we can go and trust? There's going to be a lot of fly-by-night marketing agencies that pop up, just like small business and businesses are using AI to press the easy button. People are starting agencies with that and are coming up with these get-rich-quick schemes of being able to have these very elaborate marketing strategies that will guarantee results overnight, and it's all built on AI, all of these very surface-level things that just aren't going to be long-lasting. Those are going to fizzle out, and those agencies don't retain their clients. So as a customer, being able to look for things like case studies. Do you walk the walk? Have you been able to prove what you do? Do you do it for others? And most importantly, do you do it for yourselves? So like actually going and researching your agency. If you're hiring an SEO agency, do they rank? Do they show up online? Are they investing in themselves? If you're doing a content agency, do they produce content? Being able to validate those sorts of things, the little check marks. So brand, having that presence, being able to be established, have case studies, proof of concept, that sort of thing.
I'll wrap this up here with a last thought, but I recently just posted on LinkedIn that the podcast is such an amazing thing for me, because I feel like for a long time I knew a lot of cookie cutter agencies that were kind of applying one package to every one of their customers and expecting it to work. And with AI, I see the same thing. Every AI company that's going to launch is going to be launching pretty much the exact package that they're going to give to every single customer. Maybe they have some cool reports they put together. Maybe they do some deeper assessment and try to differentiate it there. But ultimately, their fulfillment's driven by something that's been created before, right? They're replicating something else that already exists. And I think that's what's so cool about agencies like the three of you today, is the real intent to create beyond just what you like can create with an AI, like really trying to create a unique message that's, I don't know, I joke now, but passes the vibe test, right? So I appreciate the three of you joining us for this episode of episode of SEO On Air. We are out of time, so thank you guys for being guests, and we'll see you next time on SEO On Air.